And of that 2.9, a little over 800,000 is encumbered in the project agreements we have with the county commissioners for those projects. So that leads me to the last item. We have now accumulated, or will have accumulated at the end of this year, about $2.1 million of unencumbered funding that obviously is within the discretion of your board to spend on any projects that you know, the board deems notable and worthwhile. So that's something we'll want to talk about in the future. Certainly, we to date have really only done projects that are county commissioner projects that we've done by project agreement. Aside from the Riverbee project, that was actually only a TID project, but otherwise our projects have really been county projects, county engineer, county commissioner initiatives. And so we're at the point now where we've got some resources to actually take on some other projects. So I guess at that, I'll open it up to any questions. Again, you have the budget in here. If you have any specific questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those.
When you talk about the unencumbered balance, do you think you can have some potential projects coming for us in the next few months?
I think that's very possible. You know, one of the things that Chairman Bosman and I have talked about is potentially trying to assist some of our local partners, identifying some of their priority projects throughout Delaware County, cities, townships that are already maybe in the pipeline and just looking for funding. We've got a few of those that we'd be glad to talk to you about. I think that's probably the easiest path right now to make use of some of that money.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
So
I think before we started bringing projects to you, we wanted to have that bigger discussion of whether there's kind of a philosophical discussion of whether we try to build that balance bigger before we start start assisting, or whether we start when people come to us with projects, which we get a lot more requests to participate in projects than we're able to accomplish on the county side, and so. You know, I'd be able in mind to start trying to vet some of those and bring those to you if they'd fit within our available funding. It's important for us to also know it took us 3 years to get to this place.
Yeah.
That money primarily comes from our $400,000 annual pledge from the county general fund, and the administrative fee that we charge on projects. So that's doing what we intended to do in terms of building a balance and help us support other transportation projects. We just need to know if we spend $1.5 million, it might take us 2 or 3 years to build that back up. And so I think we need to make those decisions carefully. But I'm very supportive of us trying to start helping other communities.
Thank you.
If it was used as seed money on projects, then would that come before you all or come before the group, or?
Yeah, any action of that would come before this TID board. I bring it up in the context, I usually get approached outside of the context of the TID, and Rob and I might say, well, that might be a good project for us to talk to the TID about. So I wouldn't make any commitments about that individually without bringing that to this board. But you mentioned seed money. I like the idea of us participating in projects in a way that our investment leverages more money, more money from other public agencies and more grant money. So if we can use that to close the funding gap on projects that have other sources identified, I think that should be our first priority, instead of outright funding in total a project.
The speed with which we can move things along is pretty important.
Yes. And that's one of the tools we have here, is the ability to do that quicker than we might otherwise. So, we don't have any specific action for you on that
Yeah,
topic.
we
It's more just a
understood.
policy
Sure.
discussion, and I don't hear an objection from any of you as far as maybe if we see a viable project, a worthy project, to at least bring that for you before you for consideration.
Sounds good.
I also wanted to point out, we will be collecting the first of the Riverbee special assessment this year. That will generate about $28,000 in revenue for the TID. If you recall our conversation at the time, that was obviously a good project with certainly some merit. The bonus, I guess, you could say, is that secures some ongoing cash flow for the TID. And since we're a relatively lean operation with kind of our donated time and really the only out-of-pocket expenses being the financial services that we'll talk about in just a few minutes, that more than covers our annual operating expenses. And so I think that's something we'll want to look at in the future, I think, as well, as any opportunity to use some of that cash we have on hand now to secure ongoing cash flows later that can kind of support our operations and continue building up that cash reserve again. So, but we'll be on the lookout for that, I'm sure, if there's good projects that we can discuss. So I don't have anything further on the budget unless there's any other questions. I'll go through the project updates quickly. We have a certification for you for the Hyatt Road and 23 intersection project that was completed late last summer and the fall or early fall. That project, very glad to report, it came in about 9% under the the total contract amount, and so we were able to get that done cheaper than we had thought. And so we will have earned a $128,000 administrative fee on that project. Second project, 713637, I've been working with the consultant on that. They are moving ahead with kind of the preliminary base mapping and getting all the surveying and the everything ready to move into final design. And so I'll keep you apprised of anything that comes up, but there's not a whole lot to report just yet because they're doing kind of the basic work to get the design file set up. And then finally, Home Road and Sawmill Parkway, that is an active construction contract. Shelley and Sands has told us they're planning on starting construction in the spring. They're ordering materials now. There's some signal poles to be ordered, and so those are long lead items that hopefully we get by the end of this year, just with supply chain and even before the supply chain woes we're having right now, it was every bit of 9 or 10 months to get traffic signal poles. So we'll wait to see what that holds in the future. So next item, public notice regarding board meetings. We can talk about this more when you hear the item, but basically the only changes to this are to update our meeting location, which is now at this building versus the old commissioner's office, and then having the dates of the meetings published in the Delaware Gazette is optional. We can talk to decide whether that's needed, but we make adequate notice through all of our other channels, particularly the website and direct media notifications by Sarah. So, and then finally, financial services. We have a proposal from Clark, Schaefer, and Hackett to do the financial statements for the upcoming audit, and so we've used them for the last 3 or 4 years now, and SI recommends we go ahead and proceed with them again for this year. So I believe that is all I have for the monthly reports. Glad to answer any questions you may have, or we can move right on.
Don't hear any questions for Rob. Rob, thanks for your good work, and we appreciate all that you do to support our TID. With that, I'll move on to item number 9, which would be the approval of our 2022 budget, which Rob just reviewed for us. Are there any further questions about that, or is there a motion to adopt?
I'll move we adopt the 2022 budget.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Tom seconded. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. The certificate of completion for Hyatt's Road, which Rob just mentioned, it certifies the final cost of that project. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. The public notice, notification policy and resolution that we have, as Rob said, we need to get the location of the meeting corrected, and the requirement to, there's no longer a requirement that we publish that notice in the paper of general circulation within the county, but we include in this the option to do that if we feel the need to. If for some reason we decide that our internet, our webpage is not being effective, or if we decide to do that, this gives us flexibility to do that. So that amendment has been added, and I'd entertain a motion to approve that.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And then the final resolution is the engagement of Clark, Schaefer, and Hackett for our financial services ongoing, and Rob reviewed that for you as well, and Cy has recommended that and worked with him to procure that proposal. So I'd recommend that we move forward with them, and I'd entertain a motion to do so.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Yes. What is the general audit procedures like this? Do you generally change your audits every 5 years or 2 years, or how do you move different different companies who are engaging?
It's probably a good question for Cy. I don't know that there's a compelling reason to change companies just for the sake of changing. I mean, in the grand scheme, we're not a terribly complicated
Sure.
I think
operation, so.
I think the auditor's office has a long-standing relationship with it, because they're also the auditors on two of the new community authorities I'm on too. They do the audits for those too.
Just wondering.
We could defer that conversation when Cy's here. I think he might have more insight into that than I do, Tom, if you're okay with that.
Oh, yeah. I just wondered. Sometimes some groups go every 5 years and some of them go less.
Right.
and more.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good question. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Is there any other business to come before us today?
Mr. Chair, I've looked at what we have ahead of us, and I don't think there's gonna be any reason to meet in February. And so if your board decides to cancel the February meeting, that's no problem.
I would suggest we would consider that canceled unless something comes up in the meantime that we need to convene. We'll communicate that with you. But out of respect for your calendars and being able to plan ahead, feel free to, from my standpoint, feel free to go ahead and cross that. And again, if something urgent comes up that we don't anticipate, we'll let you know. Okay?
It's a plan.
Sounds good.
The only other thing I'd bring up, we're joined by Commissioner Gary Merrill, and Gary, just wanted to recognize you and thank you for the support that you and your fellow commissioners give to transportation in Delaware County and to this group. So, yeah, so thank you very much.
Good work you guys are doing.
Chairman, I do have one thing. Our streaming was not active until halfway through Rob's report.
Okay.
Ron Clayton fixed that for us, just for people who had joined us and wondered why is Rob in the middle of talking before it picked it up. I just want to assure everyone, no one really missed anything except for the appointment of Tracy Davies.
So for those of you who joined us online late, not intentionally, our apologies for our failure in technology. If you joined us in the middle of our staff report, there were no actions taken, no resolutions passed during the time when we were not being live streamed. So all the actions of the board today happened after we went live, right?
Correct.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. If there's no other business, and if there is no objection, I'll declare us adjourned without